He fired her, but seeing her with another man at the party awakened his feelings. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to the main character. He fired her on a Tuesday morning, the kind of morning that looks calm on the surface but carries a sharp edge underneath. The city outside the glass walls moved as usual. Cars crawled, people hurried, coffee steamed in paper cups. Inside the executive conference room, everything was still. Daniel Wright stood at the head of the table, suit perfectly pressed, voice steady, expression unreadable. He was a billionaire chief executive officer before 40, known for building companies and cutting ties with the same precision. Numbers obeyed him. People adjusted to him. That was how his world worked. Across from him sat Emily Carter, hands folded neatly on her lap. She had worked as his executive assistant for 3 years. She knew his schedule better than he did. She knew when to speak and when silence mattered more. She also knew, the moment he called her into this room, that something had already been decided. "This is not personal," Daniel said, sliding a folder across the table. "The company is restructuring. Your position is being eliminated. Human resources will handle the details." Emily did not open the folder. She did not ask questions. She did not beg for reconsideration. Her eyes met his for a brief second, steady and clear. "I understand," she replied. That was all. Daniel nodded, as if that single sentence confirmed everything he needed to believe. He stood. The meeting was over, just like that. Emily rose, smoothed the sleeve of her coat, and walked out without looking back. The door closed softly behind her, but the sound lingered longer than it should have. Daniel returned to his office and told himself the familiar lie. She was an employee. This was business. Feelings had no place here. They never did. Yet as the day dragged on, small things felt off. The calendar alerts appeared late. The coffee on his desk tasted wrong. The silence outside his office felt heavier than usual. He caught himself glancing toward the doorway, expecting to see her standing there with a tablet in hand, reminding him of a call or correcting a detail he had missed. She did not come. By evening, the city lights flickered on, reflecting against the glass like distant stars. Daniel loosened his tie and stared at his reflection. For a moment, something uncomfortable stirred beneath his calm exterior, but he pushed it down. He always did. 2 weeks later, the invitation arrived. The annual black tie charity gala. High profile, press everywhere. Investors, politicians, donors. A night where appearances mattered. Daniel almost declined. Then he saw her name on the guest list, Emily Carter. He told himself it meant nothing. Former employees attended public events all the time. Still, when the night came, he arrived earlier than usual. The ballroom shimmered with crystal chandeliers and quiet conversations. Laughter drifted through the air. Daniel moved through the crowd with practiced ease, shaking hands, offering controlled smiles, playing the role everyone expected. Then he saw her. Emily stood near the center of the room, wearing a deep blue dress that caught the light with every movement. She looked calm, confident, and she was not alone. A man stood beside her, close enough to matter. His hand rested lightly at the small of her back as he leaned in to speak. Emily laughed, a genuine laugh Daniel realized he had not heard before. Something inside him tightened. He did not understand it at first. The sensation was sharp, unfamiliar, unwelcome. His chest felt warm, then unsteady. His focus narrowed until the room blurred at the edges. She was no longer his assistant. He had made sure of that. So why did it feel like he had just lost something he never meant to give up? And why, for the first time in years, did control slip through his fingers the moment he saw her with another man? Emily Carter did not cry when she left the building that morning. She walked 3 blocks before the weight of it settled in. The November air was sharp, the kind that cut through wool coats and settled into the bones. She stopped at a crosswalk, clutching her bag a little tighter, and let the city move around her. 3 years. That was how long she had organized Daniel Wright's life. His meetings, his flights, his crises. She had known which investors needed reassurance and which ones needed space. She had learned to read the pauses in his voice, the way his jaw tightened when he was irritated, the rare moments when exhaustion slipped through his control. And now, just like that, she was unemployed. Emily took a deep breath and reminded herself of one simple truth. She did not have the luxury of falling apart. Her apartment rent was due in 12 days. Her mother's medical bills were already stacked neatly on the small desk by the window, unpaid but carefully sorted, as if organization alone might keep them from growing. She had savings, but not enough to feel safe, not enough to stop moving. By the time she reached her apartment, the shock had settled into something quieter and more dangerous: determination. She took off her coat, set her bag down, and opened her laptop. Job listings filled the screen. Executive assistant roles, operations coordinator, project manager, titles that sounded familiar, almost comforting, until she realized how often Daniel's name appeared in her work history. For the first time, she hesitated. Working for him had shaped her reputation. Leaving him had reshaped it overnight. Emily closed the laptop and leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. She replayed the moment in the conference room, searching for something she had missed. A flicker of regret, a crack in his voice, anything that would tell her the decision had cost him something too. There had been nothing. The following days blurred together. Interviews, rejections, polite smiles that did not reach the eyes. Recruiters who praised her experience and then asked why she had left such a powerful position so suddenly. She answered carefully, always professionally, never bitterly. At night, when the city quieted, she allowed herself a different kind of honesty. She missed the work, she missed the pace, and, though she hated admitting it, she missed him. Not the billionaire, not the chief executive officer. The man who stayed late in his office, long after everyone else had gone home. The man who trusted her without ever saying the word. The man who, for brief moments, had looked at her like she was more than part of the structure of his day. Emily pushed the thought away. That chapter was closed. A week later, an unexpected message appeared in her inbox. An invitation to the Wright Foundation charity gala. She almost declined. Then she saw the name at the bottom. The donor who had extended the invitation personally. A longtime family friend. Someone she had worked with closely, independent of Daniel. Emily stared at the screen for a long moment. Going would mean facing him. Not going would mean hiding. She chose neither fear nor pride. She chose herself. The night of the gala, she stood in front of the mirror and studied her reflection. She did not dress to impress. She dressed to belong. Calm, confident, unapologetic. When she arrived, the ballroom buzzed with familiar energy. Wealth, power, performance. She felt the old instincts return immediately, guiding her steps, sharpening her awareness. She was not lost here. A familiar voice greeted her, warm and easy, a man she trusted, a colleague from a different chapter of her life. He offered his arm, not possessively, but naturally, like someone who respected her space. Emily accepted. She did not scan the room for Daniel. She did not need to. But somewhere across the ballroom, unseen by her, Daniel Wright had just arrived. And for the first time since the day he fired her, Emily Carter was no longer the one carrying all the weight of what had been left unsaid. Daniel Wright did not expect the gala to feel different. He had attended events like this for years. The lighting, the music, the practiced smiles. He knew exactly where to stand, who to greet first, how long to stay with each conversation. It was a system, and systems always made sense to him. Yet the moment he stepped into the ballroom, something felt off. He could not explain it at first. He adjusted his cufflinks, accepted a glass of sparkling water, and moved forward as usual. Applause rippled near the stage. Cameras flashed. Familiar faces turned toward him with recognition and expectation. Still, a quiet tension followed him, settling just beneath his ribs. Daniel told himself it was nothing more than fatigue. The past few weeks had been demanding. Meetings had piled up. Decisions had come faster than usual. He had slept less, eaten irregularly, and worked through weekends without noticing. That was normal. What was not normal was how often his attention drifted. As he spoke with donors, his gaze moved across the room without intention. He found himself scanning faces, not for investors or journalists, but for something undefined. He corrected himself each time, tightening his focus, returning to the conversation at hand. This was habit, not emotion. He had fired Emily Carter 2 weeks earlier. He reminded himself of that fact with quiet firmness. The decision had been logical, necessary, clean. And yet, since that morning, the rhythm of his days had shifted. The first sign had been small, a missed call he usually never forgot, a report that arrived late because he had overlooked a detail she once managed without prompting. He had blamed the team, then himself, then moved on. But the pattern continued. His office felt larger, quieter. The space outside his door no longer held the subtle movement of someone who anticipated his needs before he voiced them. There were no gentle interruptions, no calm reminders delivered at exactly the right moment. He had not realized how much structure she had carried until it was gone. Daniel took a sip of water and nodded at a familiar board member, answering questions automatically. His mind, however, drifted backward, uninvited. He remembered late evenings, when the city lights reflected against the windows, and Emily remained at her desk, finishing tasks she could have left for the morning. He remembered her steady presence during tense negotiations, the way her voice never wavered, even when others did. He remembered the way she looked at him when she disagreed, not confrontational, not submissive, but certain. At the time, he had told himself that trust was part of efficiency, that respect was part of professionalism. He had never asked himself if it was something more. Daniel shifted his stance, suddenly aware of the weight in his chest. It was an unfamiliar pressure, one that did not respond to logic. He had dismissed it for weeks, burying it beneath work, beneath routine, beneath the comfort of control. Control had always been his anchor. Across the room, laughter rose. A soft, genuine sound that cut through the low hum of conversation. Daniel turned toward it before he could stop himself. And then he saw her. Emily stood near the center of the ballroom, her posture relaxed, her expression open. She looked different, not because of her dress or the way the light caught her hair, but because something about her seemed lighter, free. A man stood beside her, angled toward her with easy familiarity. He listened when she spoke. He smiled when she smiled. His presence was confident but not dominating, close enough to suggest connection without claiming ownership. Daniel felt the sensation again, sharper this time. His breath slowed. His grip tightened around the glass in his hand. The room seemed to tilt slightly, as if the balance he relied on had shifted without warning. This was not anger. He recognized that much. It was something quieter, heavier. For the first time, the reality settled in with full force. Emily Carter no longer belonged to his world. Not his schedule, not his office, not his control. And the realization did not bring relief. It brought loss. Daniel watched as she laughed again, her eyes bright, her body angled toward the man beside her. The image pressed against him, stirring a truth he had avoided for too long. He had believed firing her would end everything cleanly. Standing there, surrounded by music and light, Daniel Wright finally understood how wrong he had been. Emily felt it before she saw him. The shift in the room was subtle, almost imperceptible, but years of navigating high-pressure spaces had trained her instincts well. Conversations tightened. Glances lingered a fraction longer. The energy tilted. Daniel Wright had entered the ballroom. She did not turn immediately. She kept her attention on the man beside her, listening as he spoke about a recent project, nodding at the right moments. Her posture remained relaxed, her expression calm. If Daniel expected her to falter, to look away, to search for him the moment he arrived, he would be disappointed. Emily had learned the value of composure the hard way. The man with her, Michael, noticed the slight pause in the air and followed her gaze. He did not need to ask who Daniel was. Everyone in the room knew. Michael leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "Are you all right?" he asked. Emily smiled, genuine and unforced. "I am." And she was. That truth surprised her. 2 weeks ago, the thought of seeing Daniel again had tightened her chest. Tonight, the feeling was different, quieter, controlled. She had walked into the gala on her own terms, and that mattered more than she had expected. Across the room, Daniel watched her with a focus he could no longer disguise. She did not look diminished by his absence. She did not look uncertain. If anything, she looked exactly as she belonged, as though the space had simply rearranged itself around her. That unsettled him. Daniel excused himself from a conversation with a donor and took a step forward, then another. He told himself he was simply moving through the room, greeting familiar faces, fulfilling obligations, yet his path curved inevitably toward her. Emily sensed him then, closer now, his presence unmistakable. She turned at last, meeting his gaze without surprise, without tension. "Daniel," she said, her tone polite, even warm. "Good evening." The simplicity of it struck him harder than anger ever could have. "Emily," he replied. He hesitated, something he rarely did. "You look well." "Thank you," she said. "So do you." There was a pause, a small one. But in that space, the noise of the gala faded, replaced by a quiet awareness of everything left unresolved. Michael shifted slightly, offering a courteous nod. "Daniel Wright, we have not met, Michael Reynolds." Daniel shook his hand automatically, his grip firm, his attention divided. "Nice to meet you." Emily glanced between them, then turned back to Michael. "Would you excuse us for a moment?" Michael smiled, understanding more than he let on. "Of course." He stepped away, not far but far enough. Daniel exhaled slowly. "I did not expect to see you here." Emily tilted her head slightly. "It is a public event. I was invited." "Yes, I know," he said. I did not expect you to come." She studied him for a moment, then offered a small, knowing smile. "I almost did not." The honesty disarmed him. "Why did you?" he asked. Emily did not answer right away. She glanced around the ballroom, at the familiar faces, the easy laughter, the quiet negotiations unfolding behind polished expressions. "Because I did not want to let one decision define where I belong," she said finally. Daniel felt the words settle heavily. He nodded, searching for something to say that did not sound like justification or regret. "How have you been?" "Busy," she replied, moving forward. The phrase struck him again. Forward, away from him. "And you?" she asked. Daniel hesitated. The truth pressed against his throat, inconvenient and unwelcome. "The company is stable," he said instead. Emily accepted the deflection without comment. "I am glad to hear that." Another pause. The silence between them felt different now, less controlled, more fragile. Daniel glanced toward Michael, then back at Emily. The question formed before he could stop it. "Is he someone important to you?" Emily met his gaze evenly. "Yes." The single word landed with quiet force. Not an explanation, not a reassurance, a boundary. Daniel straightened, awareness flooding in. He had crossed a line, one he no longer had the right to approach. He nodded once, acknowledging the shift. "I see," he said. Emily offered a polite smile. "I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening, Daniel." She stepped back, reclaiming her space, and turned away before he could respond. As she rejoined Michael, Daniel remained where he was, watching as she resumed her conversation, her laughter returning naturally, effortlessly. For the first time that night, the truth became impossible to ignore. Losing her job had not broken Emily Carter, but losing her might break him. Daniel did not follow her immediately. He stood there as the music swelled and the crowd shifted, forcing himself to remain still. Years of discipline kept him in place, even as something inside him pressed forward, urgent and unfamiliar. Across the ballroom, Emily had returned to Michael's side. They spoke easily now, the space between them relaxed, unguarded. Michael leaned in slightly as she spoke. Emily listened, her expression attentive, her posture open. It was not an act. That realization struck Daniel harder than he expected. He had seen her perform professionalism for years. He knew the difference between courtesy and comfort. What he was watching now was real. A donor approached him, offering congratulations on the success of the foundation. Daniel nodded, responded automatically, but his attention remained fixed elsewhere. The words blurred. Applause rose and fell. Someone clinked a glass to signal the next announcement. Daniel excused himself and moved closer to the edge of the room, positioning himself where he could see her clearly without drawing attention. He told himself he was observing, gathering information, the way he always did. But this was not strategy, it was jealousy. The words surfaced slowly, reluctantly, as if naming it might give it more power. Daniel had avoided that emotion his entire adult life. It suggested loss of control, dependence, vulnerability, things he had trained himself to eliminate. Yet, here it was, undeniable. Emily laughed again, a sound light and unforced. Michael said something that made her pause, then nod thoughtfully. He listened to her in a way Daniel never had the time to, not because he did not care, but because he had assumed she would always be there. That assumption tightened around his chest. Daniel remembered the morning he fired her, how easily the words had left his mouth, how confident he had felt in the finality of it. He had believed that removing her from the structure would remove the complication. Instead, he had removed the one person who anchored him. A server passed with a tray of drinks. Daniel took one without tasting it. His gaze never left Emily. The more he watched, the clearer it became. This was not about ownership. It was about absence. She no longer revolved around him, and for the first time, he was the one standing on the outside. Emily sensed his attention then, a prickle at the back of her awareness. She did not turn. She did not need to. She already knew. The tension had shifted again, heavier now, more charged. Michael noticed her slight distraction. "Do you want to leave?" he asked quietly. Emily considered the question. She could have said yes. She could have escaped, ended the evening cleanly. But something in her refused. "Not yet," she replied. "I am fine." She was not lying. Staying was a choice, one she made for herself. Daniel watched the exchange, misreading it at first. His jaw tightened, his shoulders stiffened. The idea that Michael might take her away, remove her from his line of sight entirely, sparked something sharp and reckless. Without fully deciding to, Daniel stepped forward. He crossed the distance between them in long, controlled strides, stopping just close enough to be noticed. Emily turned at last, surprised this time, though she hid it well. "Daniel," she said. "Emily," he replied. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed him. Michael glanced between them, sensing the shift. "I will give you a moment," he said, polite but firm. "I will be nearby." He stepped away again, leaving them in a fragile pocket of space. Daniel exhaled slowly. "I should not have asked what I asked earlier." Emily folded her hands in front of her, composed. "No, you should not have. I was out of line," he continued. "You do not owe me explanations." The words surprised even him. Emily studied his face, searching for something familiar. She found sincerity instead. "That is true," Daniel swallowed. The next words came with effort. "Seeing you tonight reminded me of something I ignored." "And what is that?" she asked. "That I mistook control for clarity," he said, "and silence for absence of feeling." Emily's expression softened, but she did not step closer. "Daniel, realizing something does not undo what was done." "I know," he replied, "but I needed you to know that I see it now." The music shifted, signaling the next part of the evening. Applause rose again, pulling attention away from them. Emily nodded once. "I appreciate the honesty," she said, "but honesty does not give you access." She turned back toward Michael, rejoining him without hesitation. Daniel remained where he was, the words echoing in his mind. For the first time, his loss was public, and for the first time, he understood that awakening his feelings did not mean reclaiming her. It meant facing what he had done, without the comfort of control. The gala continued around them, but the space between Daniel and Emily felt sealed off from the noise. Emily remained beside Michael for several minutes, engaging politely, answering questions, smiling when appropriate. Yet her awareness stayed sharp, tuned to the quiet shift inside herself. Daniel's words lingered, not because they softened her resolve, but because they named something she had sensed long before he ever admitted it. Across the room, Daniel forced himself to move again. He greeted donors he had known for years. He accepted praise for the foundation, nodding at comments about leadership and vision. His responses were measured, practiced, automatic. But beneath the surface, a different calculation unfolded. For the first time, his instincts failed him. Control had always been his advantage. He anticipated outcomes. He shaped environments. He removed variables that threatened stability. Emily had been one of those variables, he realized now. Not because she was disruptive, but because she mattered, and mattering created risk. Daniel stepped onto a quieter terrace outside the ballroom, the cool night air grounding him slightly. The city stretched below, lights pulsing in steady patterns. He placed both hands on the railing and closed his eyes briefly. He had crossed a line tonight, not by speaking to her, but by wanting something he no longer had the right to want. Inside, Emily felt the night reaching its natural end. The tension had peaked and settled into something heavier, more reflective. When Michael excused himself to take a call, she moved toward the refreshment table, grateful for a moment alone. She did not expect Daniel to reappear so soon. He approached slowly this time, stopping at a respectful distance. There was no urgency in his posture now, no edge, only restraint. "Emily," he said quietly, May I have one more minute? She considered him. Not the title, not the history, just the man standing in front of her. 1 minute, she replied. Daniel nodded. I will not take more. He chose his words carefully, aware that this was not a negotiation. You were right earlier. Honesty does not give me access. I understand that. Emily said nothing, allowing the silence to do its work. I also understand that firing you the way I did was a failure, he continued. Not of management, but of judgment. Her gaze sharpened slightly. Those are not the same thing. No, he agreed. They are not. Daniel exhaled, steadying himself. I used structure to avoid responsibility. I told myself it was business, because business has rules. Feelings do not. Emily folded her arms loosely, not defensively, but thoughtfully. And what are you doing now? I am acknowledging the part I ignored, he said, without expecting anything in return. She studied his face again. The control was still there, but it was quieter now, contained. He was not asking her to step back into her old role. He was not offering solutions. He was owning something. That matters, she said after a moment, but it does not erase what I lost. I know, Daniel replied, and I am not asking you to pretend otherwise. Emily nodded once. Good. The music inside shifted again, signaling the close of the program. Guests began to drift toward exits, conversations softening, the intensity of the evening easing. Michael returned, offering Emily a gentle smile. Ready? Yes, she said. She turned back to Daniel. I hope the foundation does well this year. It will, he said, because of the people who care about it, not because of me. Emily acknowledged the sentiment with a small nod. Then she walked away. Daniel watched her leave, aware of the finality in her steps. Not rejection, but resolution. She was no longer reacting to him. She was choosing her own direction. As the ballroom emptied, Daniel remained behind for a moment, absorbing the quiet aftermath. For the first time, he understood that awakening his feelings did not give him the right to act on them. It gave him the responsibility to change. And that change, if it meant anything at all, would have to begin without her. The days after the gala unfolded with a quiet intensity that Daniel could not escape. He returned to work the following morning earlier than usual. The office lights were still dim, the corridors silent. He welcomed the stillness, hoping it would bring clarity. Instead, it amplified everything he had been avoiding. Emily's absence was no longer subtle. Her replacement was competent, efficient, and respectful. Yet the rhythm felt wrong. Meetings ran longer. Small decisions stacked up. Details slipped through gaps Emily once closed without effort. Daniel corrected them himself, but the cost was time, focus, and something deeper he had not expected. Trust. He found himself rereading emails before sending them, double-checking calendars, asking questions he had never needed to ask before. Control was still present, but it was heavier now, less fluid. Midweek, a board member requested a private conversation. It was framed as concern. It always was. The foundation is strong, the man said, folding his hands on the table. But there are questions about recent personnel changes, specifically Emily Carter. Daniel did not interrupt. She was respected, the board member continued, by donors, by partners, by staff. Her departure raised eyebrows. Daniel leaned back slightly. Her position was eliminated. Yes, the man replied carefully. But perception matters, and some perceive this as a misstep. The word landed harder than expected. After the meeting, Daniel remained seated long after the room emptied. For the first time, the consequences of his decision extended beyond emotion and into reputation. This was not just about what he had lost personally. It was about what he had damaged. Meanwhile, Emily's world was shifting in quieter ways. She moved forward with intention, but not without reflection. Interviews continued. Conversations opened doors she had not anticipated. People listened differently now, not because of where she had worked, but because of how she spoke. With clarity, with boundaries. Michael remained present, supportive but unassuming. He did not push. He did not question her distance when she needed it. That, more than anything, anchored her. One evening, as they walked through a quiet neighborhood, Michael finally asked the question he had held back. Are you leaving something unfinished? He asked gently. Emily considered it. "No," she said. "I am leaving something behind." Back at the office, Daniel faced a different confrontation. A senior executive challenged him openly during a strategy meeting, questioning a restructuring decision. The room tensed, eyes turned toward Daniel, waiting for the familiar response: authority, correction, control. Instead, Daniel paused. The silence stretched. "You are right to question it," he said finally. "I did not account for all variables." The admission stunned the room. It stunned him as well. After the meeting, he sat alone, hands resting on the desk, feeling the weight of what had shifted. For years, he had equated leadership with certainty. Tonight, he began to understand that certainty without reflection was simply arrogance in disguise. He reached for his phone, then stopped. Emily had been clear. Honesty did not grant access. Awakening feelings did not grant permission. This was the crisis he could not outsource or restructure away. He had lost her trust. He had shaken his own foundation. And for the first time, there was no contract, no authority, no position that could repair it. Only choice and consequences. As the city lights flickered on outside his window, Daniel Wright accepted the truth he had resisted since the moment he fired her. This was no longer about reclaiming Emily Carter. It was about whether he could become someone worthy of standing beside her, if fate ever allowed it again. Daniel did not announce what he was about to do. There was no press release, no board presentation, no carefully crafted narrative to protect his image. For the first time in his career, he acted without calculating how it would be received. The change began quietly. He reversed the restructuring decision that had eliminated Emily's position, not to restore it, but to acknowledge its flaw. In its place, he created a new operational structure, one that distributed authority instead of concentrating it. The announcement went out company-wide, signed personally by him. It was not an apology disguised as strategy. It was accountability. The board reacted cautiously at first, then with growing approval. Donors responded positively. Staff noticed the shift immediately. Meetings felt different. Voices that had once hesitated now spoke freely. The company did not weaken as Daniel had once feared. It steadied. 2 weeks later, the Wright Foundation hosted a smaller event. No gala, no cameras, just a community forum at a renovated neighborhood center, funded quietly by the foundation. Daniel attended without entourage, standing among volunteers instead of above them. Emily did not expect to be there. She arrived that afternoon at the invitation of a nonprofit partner she had recently begun consulting for. The work was meaningful, grounded, exactly the direction she had chosen. When she stepped inside the center, she felt the shift immediately, not in the room, but in herself. This space felt different, honest, intentional. Then she saw Daniel. He was not at the front. He was arranging chairs with a volunteer, sleeves rolled up, listening more than speaking. For a moment, Emily considered leaving. Old instincts rose, then settled. She stayed. Daniel noticed her only when someone called her name. He turned, surprised, then still. Their eyes met across the room, and for the first time since the gala, there was no tension, only recognition. He approached slowly, stopping several feet away. "I did not know you would be here," he said. "I did not know you would be either," Emily replied. "That is fair," he acknowledged. They stood in silence for a moment, the sounds of the center filling the space between them, children laughing, chairs scraping, conversations unfolding without ceremony. "This project," Emily said finally, gesturing around them, "it matters." "Yes," Daniel replied, "and I did not want my name to be the loudest thing in the room." She studied him, measuring the change not by his words but by his restraint. "I am not here to ask you for anything," he continued. "Not forgiveness, not time, not a second chance." Emily raised an eyebrow slightly. "Then why are you here?" "Because I needed to do something right," he said. "Even if you never see it, even if it changes nothing between us." The sincerity landed softly, without demand. Emily nodded. "That is the difference." Daniel hesitated, then added, "I also wanted you to know that I stepped back, from decisions that never should have been mine alone." She met his gaze. "And what are you now?" "I am learning," he said, slowly, without expecting applause. The forum began. People gathered. The moment passed naturally, without urgency. As Emily took her seat among the attendees, Daniel returned to his place in the back. He did not watch her. He did not follow. He let the distance remain what it was. Because for the first time, his gesture was not about reclaiming her. It was about proving, through action, that he could finally respect the choice she had already made. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm neither of them rushed to define. Emily continued her work with the nonprofit, her days filled with projects that felt tangible and necessary. She slept better. She smiled more easily. For the first time in years, her life was not orbiting someone else's priorities. Daniel did not disappear from her world, but he no longer tried to dominate it. They crossed paths occasionally at foundation meetings, community events, quiet spaces where work mattered more than image. When they spoke, it was with care. No assumptions. No unfinished sentences weighted with expectation. Time did what force never could. One evening, months later, Emily stood outside the same renovated center where they had last spoken. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the pavement. Daniel joined her without announcement, stopping at a respectful distance. "I wanted to thank you," he said. "For what?" she asked. "For not staying," he replied, "and for not disappearing." Emily considered his words. "I stayed where it made sense, and I left where it did not." He nodded. "That taught me more than anything else." There was no tension now, no urgency, just clarity. "I am leaving the company," Daniel added quietly. Emily turned, surprised but not alarmed. "Leaving?" "Stepping back," he clarified. "I am staying on as an advisor, but I am no longer leading it day to day." The board supported the decision. "That is a big change," she said. "It is," he agreed. "But it is the right one." She studied his face, searching for doubt. She found peace instead. They walked a few steps together in silence. "Emily," Daniel said at last, "I once believed that offering security was the same as offering partnership. I was wrong." She waited. "I am not asking you to return to anything," he continued. "I am asking if you would consider building something new, slowly, without contracts, without leverage, only choice." Emily stopped walking. She did not answer immediately. She did not need to. The answer had formed over time, shaped by distance and honesty. "I will not be managed," she said calmly. "I will not be protected at the cost of my voice." "I would never ask that," Daniel replied. "I will not step into a role where I am replaceable," she continued. "You are not," he said without hesitation. Emily met his gaze. For the first time, there was no imbalance there, no power shift, just two people standing on equal ground. "Then," she said, "we can begin with a conversation, nothing more." Daniel smiled, not with triumph, but with relief. "That is more than enough." They did not rush the ending. There was no dramatic declaration, no public spectacle, no reclaiming gesture. Only two people choosing, deliberately, to walk forward together. Daniel had once fired her, believing control would protect him. In losing her, he learned what leadership truly required. And in choosing him again, Emily did not return to the past. She stepped into a future where love was not negotiated, but freely given.